Welcome to the session about leadership, neurosocial leadership, social dynamics, and OKR. My name is Sebastian Morgner. I'm managing partner at the MLI Leadership Institute. I was working in the financial industry 15 years in the management. My last position there was global head of marketing at UniCredit, which is a Milan-based large bank. And since 12 years now, I'm coaching leadership teams in different industries, from high-tech to nutrition, in managing transformations. And it's really, for me, it's fun to work with teams. So I do not work so much with individuals, but I work with leadership teams, because I think in the team and in how a team acts together, that's really where the juice is. You will find here this little book that we wrote like 5 years ago. It's about the totally normal insanity of change. And it's based on about 100 interviews that we had with CEOs or responsibles for transformation. And it shows, what are, let's say, kind of the true psychological and organizational challenges when it's about transformation and change. Yeah, in the end, what is OKR? What would you say? What is OKR? Who is working with OKR here already? Okay. So half, I would say. So I would say OKR first is just a tool, or it's a methodology, And what I like very much about OKR is that it's common sense put in a methodology. So in my view, it's really, I love this framework, and I use it even privately. So I have a private OKR group, and I have OKR group with my company and with all the other companies, because it helps me not to forget what's really important. It's for me the major meaning of OKRs, that it always reminds me what it's important, and that it helps me in regular sequences to think about what's really important. But as you see here, and normally this was kind of animated, but it's now a PDF. There was a hammer behind, and then you see the crashed glass. If you use a tool in the wrong way, it will not be successful. And OKR is a tool like a hammer, and you can use it for purpose, but you also can use it in ways that are not really successful. And I'm really interested in the psychological part and in the social dynamic part of OKRs, because that's, I think, where it becomes really interesting, but where you also can make a lot of mistakes. So recently I had a company, and they said, yeah, we are using OKRs, but nothing moves. And I was asking them, yeah, how are you using OKRs? Yeah, each quarter, everybody gets a mail. Please enter your objectives and your key results. And then we enter the objectives and key results, and then nothing happens. And I said, okay, perhaps you're just using the tool, but perhaps you didn't think about what's behind it, And I really observe that quite often, if with a bureaucratic mindset you use OKRs like all the other tools, then it can be a waste of time. At least you do not really leverage on the big potentials that it has. And leadership still is a challenge. And as a leader, you have to accept that still 9 of 10 strategic initiatives do not meet the expectations. 85% of employees are not engaged with their job, with their work. And really, in more or less all the companies we come to, it's always like about 60% of employees and middle managers say, we do not know the strategy. We do not know what the strategy is about it, or we do not understand it. And yeah, and there's the question, what is the role of leadership in this context, in the context of OKR? I mean, leadership is a little bit a buzzword like peace or love or whatever. You can interpret what you want in it. What do you think is the role of leadership, the true role of leadership? Any idea? Set direction.
Align people and ensure that there is something to focus on around.
Align people and excite them. Exactly. So I think leadership is really about aligning thoughts of the people you need and enable outcome-driven actions. And the really tough thing is align the thoughts. Because as you might know, each of us has about 60,000 thoughts a day. Most of them are stupid, some of them are helpful. Everybody has a lot of confusion in their head. And then you have like 100 people and you need to align them to have kind of the same picture, what to achieve and how to get there. This is really hard work. And for me, this is the main work also behind OKR, which is often not seen at all. So often people do think, I mean, we write in, you know, I think about it, an objective, we discuss it, and we write 2 sentences, and then we communicate it to the people, and then for sure they know what it's all about. But the problem is everybody associates different things with words. So what you think is self-explaining for other people is totally not to understand. Yeah? I once was with UniCredit in a value lab, and for example, we were talking about the value of respect. And then I and some people said, yeah, respect means, you know, talking on eye level, seeing the other person with all their strength and so on. And then the head of this lab, you know, she was from the compliance in Italy. She was totally annoyed and said, no, respect means you have to respect the top-down guidance of the top management. Yeah. So, and you know what happens there happens also with phrases that you use to write what objectives are, and even sometimes key results. You know, people think we have made it very precise, and in the end, it's precise for them, but not for the others. Yeah. So, if you want to be successful in business, you need people to follow you, and you need to overcome something that Professor Rademacher is calling a human defense machine, and this is the brain, you know, because the brain is there, the human brain is there to secure ourselves from taking risks. And I mean, everybody has got where she or he is quite successfully, at least they came there, and then somebody comes to them and says, change something, invent a new methodology like OKR, or help us to organize a transformation. And then for sure the brain is asking, why? What's in for me? We have already tried that, and so on. And as long as people have these mental burdens in their brains, you know, as long it will be very hard to get their commitment to really support a process like the OKR process. And OKR only works if you have people that work autonomously together, that take responsibility, that fully are committed. And so it really should be the biggest purpose inventing OKR, to ensure that you have the right people on board, and that you take in consideration what are normal, you know, reactions to when people should start something new, a new process like OKR, but also then get involved in realizing OKRs. And there's one deeper truth, and that's that humans hate uncertainty. I mean, we just hate it, you know. Even if we say we like it, it's still we would prefer to really know what will the future bring and how to get there exactly. And, you know, and the funny fact about that, observing leadership teams for 10 years now, is that very often the people that demand change the loudest way are the ones that hate change the most. So in this book, you will find a quote from a CEO, I think he was from IKEA. And he said, you know, if a new CEO comes into a company and says, everything has to change here, this person normally means everything apart from me. Because I want to do it as I know. I want to have certainty. I want to use my routines and my methods. And this is really the problem that I find when I try to convince leadership teams to really go the journey to implement OKRs where it's necessary or meaningful. Yeah, but as we said, I mean, everything that is new, everything that is valuable is not known right now. Because if it would be known what it is and how to get there, it would be realized already. So the funny thing is that all the innovation, all the value added, all the wow factors are something that are in the unknown. So you have to discover what the customers really want. You have to discover the product market fit. You have to discover what kind of organizational setup really works. And therefore you need people that are curious and that are in a state that they want to find out what is possible, and that trust in a process and trust in something like the OKR. So they trust in a process and they say, okay, we start going, even if we don't know what's the solution, because we have some vision that excites us, and because we trust that everybody here will support each other and that this process will work. And so building this trust is a major leadership task when it's about OKRs. You know, and a fact that really fascinates me a lot is that 80% of a company's performance cannot be explained by their business model, by their budget, by their patents, but by interpersonal group dynamics. And this is not something that I said, but it's something that a company said, which is very popular for normally quantitative approaches and so on. It's McKinsey, so it's Strategy Beyond the Hockey Stick, and it's a study that they made where they compared companies that in the long term overperformed industry average, and they came to the conclusion that the explanatory factors why these companies were above industry average was social dynamics. You can also call that culture, working culture, leadership culture, however you call it. In the end, social dynamics describes the ability of a community to react to internal or external changes. So the ability to change something when change is needed. And this has different aspects like the group dynamics, how people interact with each other, power relations. So is there only one person that decides everything, or is power more or less equally distributed? Dealing with conflicts, do we have a culture where people give honest feedback and honestly talk about different perceptions, or where they try to avoid conflicts because they think it's not nice to speak about different perspectives? It's about values. Do we have a closed shop culture, or is transparency key? It's about norms. How are the etiquettes? Do people wear ties? How important is status? Or are people, is it more important that you really convince others by being a specialist or whatever. And for sure, also identity is important. So what is the joint goal? What is the joint purpose that you have? Do you identify with this community you work for and you work in? And I think these social dynamics are amazingly interesting, because when you understand them, you understand everything. You know, when I was a young manager, I was preparing steering committees like hell until 4 o'clock in the morning. Then I came there, I presented like, I had prepared 100 pages. After the 4th page, the steering committee got nervous and there was a shitstorm and they didn't like what I say. And I never understood, why. I was so ambitious and I was successful. And then I understood from a systemic viewpoint, that I confused them with too many slides, and they had, kind of their battles among each other. And so to see all that, then it really becomes interesting. And then you understand that a tool is just a tool, but a tool is nothing if you do not think about the context. Yeah, and what I really think is fascinating, and we work here since 10 years with a very smart neuroscientist, Markus Deutschmann, he's at the Zurich Hospital, is that when I act now and when I look at you, this triggers neurobiological processes in your brain. And these neurobiological processes define your state, if you're in a good state or if you're in a bad state. And so leadership, in the way the signals leaders send out and the way they behave, they influence the neurobiology of a whole community, even of a huge company. And they often are not aware that they trigger biological processes which lead to the fact that people are totally hesitant and, and cautious and lack of energy, or that they also may achieve it that the people are positive and they want to change something and they are, engaged, yeah? And I think that's really, really interesting. And this is for sure because we are tribal animals. We have been tribal animals since 100,000 of years. And in tribes, for sure, what's very important was the head of the tribe, because this head was distributing the resources, sometimes even distributing women to men and so on. And so for sure, and the survival strategy of humans is cooperation, but cooperation in tribes. And so if you want it or not, and if you have holacracy or not, unconsciously, we are tribal animals, and we look who are the leaders of this tribe and how do they behave, and we copy their behavior. It's just like this. If we want to accept it or not, it's just a fact, And it's so funny when I come in companies, and I work with peers, and they are totally engaged, and there's deep discussions, honest discussions, and then the door opens and a board member comes in, and it's a hierarchical culture. You think they just swallowed medicine, because everybody then, everybody's quiet, this person talks. It's a totally different, group, even if it's the same people, just because hierarchy entered the room, And so we developed something that we call neurotraffic light. And this neurotraffic light shows certain things that leadership can influence and that have an impact on the state, the physical and mental state of the people working. And this is very important if you want to use OKR in a positive way, So the first, I start with the bottom, is cortisol. Cortisol is a neurotransmitter, and it's activated in our brain when we observe an environment that we interpret like, oh shit, again, every day, you know. So our brain thinks we have to prepare for a long, depriving struggle that never ends. Often it is bureaucratic processes, planning processes, monitorings you have to enter day by day, you know. But it also can be certain meetings. I know for 5 years I had a Monday morning management meeting. It was so horrible. It was not, you know, it was not moderated at all. It was also always the same people talking the same bullshit, you know, for years. So on Sunday evening, I thought, oh my gosh, tomorrow again, I have to fight. And then if there are things that stress you in the long run, you know, even why they overwhelm you or why they bore you, both is possible, then this neurotransmitter cortisol says your body, go to standby, you know, don't move. I mean, you need the energy later and it's not worth investing energy in this process because it's all for nothing. Yeah? If you have an organization in which cortisol is prevailing in the heads of the people, it's not good to implement OKRs. Yeah? It's, you will have a lot of paralyzed people that will not take responsibility, that will not think proactively, that will not talk with people in other departments and, you know, foster cross-functional collaboration. Then what leaders have to be aware is that there is another neurotransmitter, and there are thousands, but we only choose 4 because otherwise nobody would understand it. It's noradrenaline. So this stands for stage fright, so for getting out of the comfort zone. And that's an important neurotransmitter. So as a leader, you sometimes have to shock your organization, or you wake up people and make them clear, okay, we have to change something, you know. But if you tell them you have to change something, then you cannot leave them alone, because otherwise they will go down to cortisol, because they say, oh shit, he blamed us, he said we are stupid, he doesn't need us, but he doesn't know, didn't give us any hint how to change things and how to get there. So what people really need, and human beings really need, is dopamine. Dopamine here stands for the evaluation of future prospects. So having the feeling being on the right track, having a vision, having a BHAG, molds, but also an inner picture what this will mean, so that you really can imagine what will be different in the future than today. And people really need this when you want to get them into the unknown, they need to have this feeling that they are on a good way and that they have future prospects. And then you need serotonin. And serotonin is, in Germany, it's a happiness hormone, Glückshormon. And this you need to have the feeling that you are a valued member of a strong community. Because there are 2 existential fears that humans have and had in the past. And one is to be physically injured, because that in the past often meant the end of your existence. But the second thing, and this is really important for leadership, is being excluded. Being excluded from the community also meant when the tribal had said, go, we don't want to see you anymore, this was the worst, you know, danger ever. And there are neurosocial, neuroscientific experiments, which is very funny, because pain, you have 2 different feelings of pain. You have one, when I put a hammer on my hand, I have on the somatosensory cortex, my brain tells me, okay, there's a problem at your finger, you know, it's just smashed. But there are people which lack this other part of the brain, this anterior cingulate cortex, that see their hand burning and they say, okay, yeah, I think there's a problem. Because here you have the emotional pain. And the funny thing is, when you hurt people or when in front of others you separate a person, you blame her or him, or you somehow give this person the people that she's not part of the community, the same area in the brain is activated. And for me, this was very interesting. When I was a young manager, I once was really angry about one team member, and in front of the others, I got excited. I didn't smash her, I didn't say bad words, but I was loud and I was aggressive. And it took me 1 year, to get back her trust, and I did everything, and I went to dinner and whatever, and I felt she didn't trust me. And when I then saw this, I knew it was the same. Then I would have put a hammer on her back, in front of the others. She felt excluded, and therefore she lost trust. And as a leader communicating with people, you have to be aware of what the words you say, what the actions you do with the brains of the people and with the social dynamics. There was this CIO in a large group. At his first town hall, he said, everybody who has been working here for more than 5 years is not of value for me anymore, because they are blinded to this organization. They do not have this innovative thinking. I mean, with this, he lost 2,000 people in 1 minute. And he will never, never, never get them back. Not after 3 years, not after 5 years. Yeah, he just lost them. So actually totally stupid what he did, but I think he was not aware of that. Yeah, and then, this, if you're aware of that, you really can think about how does leadership impact, for example, something like target setting and OKR. And as we said, if people go to the uncertain, to the unknown, they need to trust in the process. And if there is a lack of vision or strategy, if the people just don't know it, if it's not communicated, if there's a blame culture, if people heard that somebody who made a mistake because this person took responsibility then got a lot of trouble with the board or even had to leave the company. If there's unrealistic goals, if there's just these big goals but no goals that slice the elephant and where the people understand how to get there. If there's a bureaucratic planning process, if there's top-down leadership, if you get served your goals or your ambitions without having a discussion, or if you do not know how exactly you contribute to the overall success, which in larger companies very often happens. I always ask the people, do you know how you contribute to overall success? And very often people say, I have no clue. I just don't know. Then people feel lost. Then people have the feeling our management does not know where to go. And it's not good if you follow somebody you don't trust that this group knows where to go. You have the feeling my opinion doesn't count. I don't count. I work in vain. This fight will go forever or nobody needs me. And really, you can see it when you go to the cantina of a company. There's companies where in the cantina it's so quiet and people are sitting there, and really in average you get this impression there's no energy. And in other companies, people are talking and there's a totally different type of gesture and how people act, and much more energy in the room. So you really see it's the whole company that can be affected. And so OKRs, when you use them in the right way, but only when you use them in the right way, when you have an engaging vision, when you have a vision that is also kind of visualized, or when you really invest that people really have all the same inner picture about what the future should look like. If you have an explorative mindset. So if you work with hypotheses and if you motivate people to be curious to find out things, only in the new areas, you have to really separate. So OKRs only for me make sense in complex areas, not in complicated areas. So I would never steer the air control at an airport with OKRs, because there, if you make a mistake, it's really not good. But if you have this mindset, if you have a supportive culture, if people work in groups and are really have the feeling that they can decide autonomously what to do in the certain frame, if you have a sense of shared leadership, that everybody in a group in a certain situation is the one that the group follows because they know this person now is the one which is most competent or has a role which is in this situation important, then people have the feeling, I belong to a strong community, I contribute to something valuable, we strive together, I have a motivating perspective, and then they trust, or may trust themselves and their leaders. And so this is really what neurosocial leadership is about, that it's a new view on leadership from a neuroscientific and psychological viewpoint. And it helps to really understand what people, co-workers needs, that they understand their role better and that they feel empowered. And it views leadership as a shared process. So there's not one person who is the leader and all the other follows, but in a really working agile environment, you have shared responsibility, you have shared leadership. And so you create a sustainable social dynamic that really can improve the performance of the individuals and foster motivation and satisfaction. And there's one question that you can ask people to find out if they are in a good state or not, or if they are in the right mental state to really be successful with OKRs. And that's when you ask them in the night, when you wake up and you think about the job, or sometimes you have this, you cannot sleep and you think about something. Are you concerned about yourself? Do you think about, oh, what's with me? Am I in danger? What's happening with me? Do they like me? Or are you concerned about the greater good, the outcome? So do you really think in customer solutions and how can we do that? And really, you can observe it by yourself. When you are in a state where you think about yourself, you are not in a good state for being productive. If you know you're safe, you have a clear role, and then you start thinking about the outcome, then it's a very good precondition to be successful with the OKRs. And in the end, before you get here, that you introduce OKRs, you have to start with yourself. You need people that do self-leadership, that are able to reflect themselves and to have a clear vision and a clear understanding what are their strengths, but also their weaknesses. You need the ability of people leadership to have empathy, to have really honest dialogues. And what many people forget in leadership positions, you need to be able to build high-performing teams and clarify roles in these teams. And then you can think about the business and the business success. So OKR and a neurosocial kind of leadership, then the tool really hits the purpose. Thank you very much. So, do you have any questions or comments? We start here, then.
Right, we said in organizations where the cortisol is in the head of people and should not implement OKRs, or if you're not in favor to implement, or favorable to implement OKRs. So how you work with these organizations?
Yeah, the question was, I said that in organizations where cortisol is the dominant neurotransmitter in the brains, you should not work with OKR, and how to get people and organizations in a mood, that OKR will work. So I think there can be two reasons. So you can have OKRs, but you do not use them in the right way. Then you also have a lot of cortisol. I know a lot of teams that started with OKRs, and then, they wanted to achieve goals in an autonomous way with their group. And then the line manager is always asking, where are you? And the line managers are intervening. Then there are steering committees. Then there are parallel organizations. And then the people really get in a red state because they cannot focus on what OKR means, really working outcome driven. And you have organizations, where you have a top-down culture, where you have a blame culture, where people are so afraid about, where there's no psychological safety. So people are not open to share any thought that they have, even if they might think themselves, somehow it's stupid, but for me it's important, so I need others to help me interpreting it. And when we start a project, we do interviews with about 50 people, all different kinds of people, to understand their mindset and then to understand the culture. And in the end, if you have a culture that is far away from what you need to implement OKRs, then you first have to start with the leadership, changing the leadership skills. And it doesn't make sense to start OKRs then. So I'm also in some companies where I work with the management since 3 years now, and now we start implementing OKRs because now they feel somehow empowered enough, to go on this way.
Well, you basically took the words out of my mouth. I have very much the same question. The answer much of it. Working with the management, you said, was a way of changing a cortisol-dominated organization into being prepared to work with OKRs. Could you elaborate a little bit more on the method or the change management work that you do to get, starting with the management, but then really getting them prepared to be open and positive to change?
I think there's two major interesting things. The first thing is that to accept that managers often are very confused in their brains by themselves. So they have so many ideas and they get so many inputs. And so they first need somebody to help them structure their own thoughts, So sometimes it's really that we say, hey, come on, let's first, what is your vision? What is your BHAG? And then, okay, let's define some midterm goals. And then let's put all the things that have to be done to get there on a big whiteboard and, define some streams. And then yes, that could be a way. So first you have to really help also managers to find their way, because co-workers, employees often think, they know everything. Well, that's true. That's not true. They know less than the co-workers, and they are full of fear. And so to understand that and to help management teams to structure their own roadmap first, because they know when we go out and we talk to the co-workers, we have to convey confidence, otherwise they feel that we are insecure. Now, that is really important. And then to really form management teams. So often really in the top management, people are very much define themselves over their functions and their responsibility, their line responsibility. And they are not aware that they as a team have a lot of potential. For example, I was in a bank, and the CEO, he was a very analytic, very rational guy, but he hated it to talk with people, He always like, I do not know what they will ask me, and then I do not know the answer. What will I do? And he thought that was his position. And then we figured out that there was the sales head who loved it, talking with people. So he said, come on, you have two roles. One is, presenting the long-term strategy very rationally. And then when it's about, talking with the people, then the other person goes into the lead. And that worked. But they were somehow not aware before that they could do that. Yep.
Question. So what can spark cortisol is something very individual as well as students. So past experiences like going to psychology and all that. How do you adjust for that and implementing this? How do you find like the best practices that, or like the communication paths, so to say, and behaviors from leadership that can trigger like the critical mass to go into like the more positive neurotransmitter realms?
I mean, actually, for example, right now we are in a big insurance group where really you have team workshops with all employees, so really 10,000 people, and they use this neuro light, traffic light, and they think about what puts myself under cortisol because of personal reasons and what puts myself under cortisol because of the working environment, what motivates me, and then they discuss it, and it's really a bottom-up process so that they really learn using this neurotraffic light as a tool and thinking about when I act right now, or when I say something, what will be the impact on the others? And this helps them to be more mindful, let's say. And I think that's how we do it when the company is accepting such a process, for sure.
I got two questions. When you talk about leadership, you talk about values. Let's say we saw so many leadership workshops already, doing the leadership value exercises, and only having the verbal commitment on values gone out of the room, and everyone has this personal agenda. So how do you address that? And at the same time, couldn't the OKRs not the right framework to really enable shared values? When we talk about focus, when we talk about collaboration, to give the leadership aha moments, working in the framework and saying, oh, he's right, we could collaborate on these key results. And that's to really...
Absolutely. I mean, actually, I hate labs where you talk about values, because this is just blah, blah. And as I said, the only thing that really counts is the action. That's your behavior. So, and I think people much more follow if they see a certain behavior that they think is good and productive than if somebody is using nice words and then they observe a behavior which is totally contradictory. And therefore, I think implementing OKR is the best way of cultural change you can have if done in a wise way. For example, we are currently in a huge group where the board of directors, they are so conservative, they will never accept OKR and the psychology behind it. But the CHRO, so she's in the board for HR, she knows we have to change the culture, otherwise we will not get young talents into our company. And latest in 10 years, we don't exist anymore. And so now we started in her area. She took a leadership team of people that really are open and curious and want to do it. And we started it there to do the transformation with OKRs. And now word of mouth is spreading around and people talk about it, and other areas say, oh, what are you doing there? You people are so energetic and there's so many happening. And I think this is really the best way of cultural change. Just do it, but you have to see what is the lever or the Hebel, you say in Germany, to be successful. So it has been a pleasure talking with you. Who wants can read the book, and I think there's also my contact data in case you have further questions or want to have an exchange on implementing leadership with OKR. Thank you very much.